Hi guys, welcome back to the Confused Millennial podcast. I'm Rachel, your host and the blogger behind theconfusedmillennial.com. And this podcast is all about helping you embrace more of who you are while navigating this whole adulting thing. We cover everything from personal development to careers to spirituality. And today's guest is Natalie Miles. Today's episode is actually a continuation from last week with her. So in case you missed that, Natalie Miles is a psychic medium. She actually connected with her spirit guide when she was 5 years old. In her teens, she developed her skills, and then she fell into a bit of the matrix where she worked in film for 10 years before realizing she couldn't ignore the calling of her spiritual gifts and began working full-time with spirit as a psychic and a medium. She is absolutely amazing, as you guys probably heard in the last episode, both in Eric and my testimonial of our sessions with her and just her interview alone. She just is so much beyond a psychic and a medium. After I left my session with her, I felt like I had just left in both like an intensive therapy session and a life coaching session. And like I said, within weeks, like things that she had said started coming to fruition for us. I don't know who actually mentioned this. She actually did channel somebody on the other side for me. So I did get to experience the mediumship with her as well in my session. And it was all just so cool. Last week's episode, we talked more about mediumship. This week's episode, we aren't going to be talking so much about that. We talk a lot more about your spirit guides in this week's episode. So if you did miss last week's episode, I would definitely hit pause on this and go back and listen to that one. Because like I said, we talk about mediumship. We talk about creating space and setting boundaries, what it's like growing up in an intuitive family and developing your spiritual gifts, turning off your intuition and getting lost in that daily 9-to-5 grind, and why past life work is just so important. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about connecting with your spirit guides, how you guys can go about it, how you can tell if it's actually your thoughts versus your spirit guides guiding you, what that types of growth and evolution can look like just from a personal development perspective or when you're connecting with spirit, and so much more. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into this week's episode with Natalie. Enjoy.
Great question. There's a misconception that you're going to hear some different voice that's going to appear in your head, like the voice of God, is going to, suddenly you're going to be hearing this man's voice in your head, if you're a woman, or like it's going to feel, and it will feel strange. The answer is it's going to sound like your own voice. It will sound like you're thinking, but it will have a different tone to it. So it will have more of a guidance tone. It will feel like it's not coming from you. There's a feeling that's associated with it, that it feels separated from your own daily mind chatter that we all have. And so it will feel like it's guidance, that it's coming from somewhere else, but it will have a different tone to it. And that's how I love to describe it. A lot of people ask me, Nat, but how do I trust that? How do I trust that? How do I know whether it's me or it's my guide? Trust. Trust is the biggest part of this work. We're looking for as humans, we're always looking for something tangible. We're looking for proof. We're looking for something to be real. And so with this work, the trust element is such a game changer. You have to trust what you're hearing and act on it. And if you're not acting on it, spirit guides they'll keep repeating. They will keep giving you the answer. They will keep sending it to you until you listen. Mm-hmm. With spirit guides and this work, it might be that you don't necessarily hear the message. You might get they might appear in other ways for you. Mm-hmm. For me, spirit guides, I love to say that they are the easiest way to access our intuition. They are like the gateway, because we all have a cheerleader team in spirit. They are, our spirit guides, and we can call on them to ask for guidance. The best way to connect to your spirit guides is ask them to step forward. A lot of the time they hang out in the background because we haven't been working with them for a really long time, and they want us to, actually know that they want us to work with them and interact with them. So ask them to step forward. That is the best and quickest way to get to connect with them. And then once you've asked them to step forward, I always say, pick a sign. like they love to show us signs and symbols. It brings it back to me saying like they live in this world. Like this is not, you know, they are all around us, and they will bring you signs and messages in this world that make sense to you. For me, I have a sign that lets me know that I'm on the right path, which is an owl. And so I asked my guides, show me the sign that I'm on the right path. And they showed me that it was an owl. And for me, when I see owls like walking around, whether it be on a t-shirt, on the TV, wherever owls come up, it's so random where they appear, and on someone's t-shirt, like on a drawing, I know that I'm on the right path and I'm on the right track. So for anyone that doesn't know who their spirit guides are, ask them to step forward and ask for a sign.
So there's so many questions in that. Okay. So number one, rewinding to the very beginning, is do you think people hear, I mean, I'm sure it's different for everybody. You know, for me, and you and I have talked about this, like I would hear a lot of more like trapped spirits, a lot more spirits that are just a denser energy. And so when you and I had our session, you were like, okay, you've been in like the darkness a lot. Like it's time to actually get to see the light. Like it's time to get into like all of this fun, lighter stuff, you know? Yeah, the good stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's so cool. So a lot of times when I would hear spirits, and Eric's talked about this on the podcast too, where when he first started realizing that he was hearing spirits, you know, when you talk out loud, you kind of feel your thoughts coming from like the front of your head, like you feel yourself pushing them. Whereas like in the back of your head, like where your neck meets your spine, like he would hear like a whisper, and that was like how he really hears them. And that's how I hear a lot of them too. Do spirit guides sound different from other spirits that are coming into your energy field?
Great question. Yeah, I completely agree that the voices, when you hear them, have more of a depth to them, that it comes from the back of your head. That's a great way to describe it. Versus the chatter, which feels very more frontal lobe. This feels like it's got a depth, and that it's coming from, the back of your brain. So this is the difference between mediumship and connecting with your guides. So the mediumship that we were talking about around connecting to the darker energies, and if you are connecting to a loved one that's passed over, for me, when I'm connecting, it has a different tone. It just feels different. I have it as a different energy in my body. So when I'm connecting to a spirit or a mediumship, when I'm doing mediumship and it comes over, I know, because this sounds a little strange, I get this weird tingle that comes up all the way over my body first, that lets me know that it's a spirit that's passed over and it's not a guide. And this is also when you're connected, because we all have one main guide. So we have a main guide that's been with us from the moment we're born until the moment we pass over. They're with us the whole time. And what happens is that once you grow your connection with them, you also know what their energy is. It's exactly the same as if you were meeting someone in person, that you know what your mum's energy is, you know what Eric's energy is, like you know what their energy is. And it's exactly the same as your spirit guide, because you know and can distinguish their energy like you would any other physical human relationship.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's so after we had done our session, I was like, okay, I'm going to start like trying to talk to my spirit guides more and like start talking to like angels, because I went to one psychic when I was 24 because I was very resistant to all of this stuff, and that was the only psychic I had been to until like this year. And she's like, there are just angels all around you. And I was like, really? Because I don't feel it at all. She's like, no, there's just a lot. And like I went into a Reiki circle. She's like, there are just angels and children all around you. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I had never like tried talking to any of them, which I know sounds probably weird. It's like, why are you talking to all these dense spirits that are giving you like self-doubt and self-loathing and all this stuff, rather than like the light spirits? It just never occurred to me to really talk to them before. And I started trying to I would like call on my guides and like talk to them and ask them, to help me. Cause like that's the big thing I'm really working on, is asking for help and assistance recently. And it's funny that you say that other spirits feel like a tingle coming up your spine. Cause when I've been calling in my spirit guides into the shower, which I heard you say on another podcast, that the shower is a great place to try to connect with them. It feels like almost like a rainfall of like tingly spirits coming down my body from like my head and stuff like that. So that's been really cool to kind of feel that.
Yeah, and it will feel like that sparkle tingle. It will feel like, whoa, and the shower is amazing. It's the time of the day where we don't have our phones attached to us, unless you're crazy and you're taking your phone into the shower with you. But it's literally like the space where, it's just our space. Mm-hmm. And so we're free from distractions, we're free from other noises, and it's so I always use the water as using it as like white light to cleanse my aura, to get me into the right space. And then you just ask your guides, what do I need to know today? Mm-hmm. And they come up, and just trust where your mind wanders, because it does. Your mind will wander and you'll think, oh, am I just thinking this? But trust what comes through for you in the shower.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, because that's been really cool to kind of start to see the shift of all of it, and just how it does feel differently in my body compared to all of this. And I hadn't actually made the connection of how it feels differently into my body until hearing you talk just now. So that's really fun to kind of get into it. Why do you think it's important for us all to build these relationships with our spirit guides?
Because we are all looking for connection. Mm-hmm. We are walking through life looking for real depth and connection. And we can feel alone and we can feel lost. And even though we have, the internet, social media, and the relationships around us, there are times that we can still have all of this, but still feel like we're looking for something else. Mm-hmm. And this looking for something else is you're looking for your own inner divine connection to who you are, what you're about. And this is your intuition. You're looking for your own inner guidance system. So the reason why connecting to guides is important is because you have this cheerleader team in spirit who are here to guide you, support you, love you, protect you, send you information. And by working with them, you will feel more connected. And they are the gateway to your intuition. Mm-hmm. You'll begin to notice that you will be receiving other information that is important for your life and your soul journey, and you'll feel more confident in the decisions that you're making. You'll notice abundance in your life. You'll see an improvement of the relationships that are around you. And your main guide that's been with you since, you're born until you pass over, they have infinite love for you. They know you better than anyone else, like walking this planet. And once you cultivate that relationship with them and you feel that love, it's like mind-blowing.
I'm wondering, like, if somebody that, maybe doesn't feel like the world was a safe place, like they were raised with a lot of trauma and abuse, if you can tap into that, like, does it shift the entire perspective? Because now you actually feel this unconditional love walking around with you.
Massively, big time. And that's why it's so important for us to realize that this work lives in this plane. It's not, I read so much work that makes this work like it's that we can't touch it, that we can't experience it, that spirit lives somewhere else, and it doesn't. It lives within us. It's all around us. And that's what's important, especially if you've been through fear and trauma and that you feel lost, that you've got nowhere to go and you are feeling alone. Remember that, it is important for you to remember that you're not, and you can call your guides to, bring them forward, and they're great to help with healing.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And it's, I like the part about like asking for a sign and stuff like that. I feel like there's been a lot of times in my life where I just felt like different periods of rock bottom, different periods where like I just don't want to go forward and things like that. And like I would ask for help, and then I would get a random message. Something would happen that would change the course of the path that I was on. And I never had really made a connection of that that was my guides until really this moment, because you just don't think, like you said, you have this guide that's been with you since birth, but you don't necessarily have a relationship with it yet. And so just kind of when you can look back on your life, I just feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude right now.
No, and it is because we get blocked from it. And then it's when we look at the really bad, like straight out the negative times, or the things where you've been forced to make changes and it doesn't make sense, or something's bad's happened. A lot of the time we're not listening. So spirit throw us mini rocks, and then when we're not listening to the mini rocks, they throw bigger rocks, and then when we're still not listening to what the message is, they'll throw in the life boulder that is like, are you going to listen? And for me, it was when in my late 20s that I realized that my guides were giving me messages in, a 5-year relationship that I'd been in for a really long time, and I was gripping on so hard, and I was like, nope, this relationship is the one. I want to get married. I want to have kids with this guy. And then it all started to unfurl, and I was like, but whoa. And I'd switched off massively from using my intuition and connecting with my guides. And, I got flooded twice. My apartment got flooded twice. A car drove through our apartment, through the lounge of our apartment, like into the space. And it was suddenly like, and at the time I was like, why is this all happening? Like, why we're having such a bad streak? And it was only when I was out of the situation and I was back living at home with my mum. And just before my 30th birthday, and I was like, how have I got here? Like, what is this all about? And I was like, oh shit, my guides were trying to give me a message. This was all happening as a sign and as a message of, Natalie, what are you doing? Like, we need to change things. We need to change things up. And yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I encourage any listener, go and look back at the times in your life where things have changed, where you have been at rock bottom, or you've been craving changes, but you've been resisting and holding on, and look at what happens around those times.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier, where like change and evolution doesn't have to be a struggle, but when we're resisting it, the rocks start off small and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger until you're getting beat over the head with them. And so it's really up to us, our choice, to make pain and evolution painful, or make evolution painful, or just get the message earlier on and trust the intuition earlier on, so that we don't have to go through all of these gigantic hurdles and bumps.
Exactly. And that gives me complete goosebumps as you say that, because that is the purpose of connecting to our intuition. Because, living this life is not about pain and suffering. It's about love, ease, and grace, and having fun, and and for all of us doing the learning and it being abundant. And it is a choice whether we choose, the path of fear or the path of love.
Yes, I love that. And I mean, and that's, it's always one of those things where you have to tie it back also to what you were saying before about, like, we live in a society where a lot of us are programmed in fear and judgment. One of the toughest things for me has been, saying no to family or friends, and just like going out into the world when just situations didn't feel right to me. Like, it didn't light me up. I didn't feel like, I was just like, this doesn't seem like where I should be spending my time. And while it might look externally like that decision's not coming from a place of love, it really is. Because then I'm going to be miserable. I'm probably going to be passive aggressive and pick a fight. And so, like, it's one of those things where we can't be afraid of saying, no, I'm not going to go to that, even though I know you want me there, because that can be a form of love. I think sometimes we forget that too.
100%, completely. It's that whole, I choose me, like, and it's not negative and it's not being selfish. It is like, I'm doing this out of a place of love because, this feels right for me. And we can get too het up on and too focused on worrying what other people think all the time. Yeah. We make so many decisions based on worrying what other people will think or what the outcome will be. It's amazing in my one-on-one sessions why people don't do things because they're worried. We play out out the story in our head before it's even happened. Oh, well, if I do this, then this could happen, and this could happen, and then this could happen. And we never, and so we're always living out this kind of planning in fear. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm going through that kind of evolution process now with my mom, where her and I have had a very strained relationship for the last decade. And this year we've started talking more and things like that, but I'm definitely coming at it from more of an adult approach, which is like, I'm going to say yes if things feel right, and I'm going to say no if things don't feel right. And she asked me to go on like a catamaran ride, and initially I was like yes, and then I got this thought, or a guide, a ping, whatever you want to call it, where I was like, maybe you shouldn't have said yes that quick. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the best situation for you. And then my guide delivered, and the next day, even though I had already told her yes, she goes, do you want to go on this catamaran thing with me? And I'm like, nope. That was the message. That was it. Don't do it. Like, listen to that afterthought. And she was like, why? Do you not want to be stuck on a boat with me and my husband for that long? And da-da-da-da-da. Like, did we do something? And I was like, I literally told her exactly what I just told you. I said yes. I had this thought right after, maybe I shouldn't go. And then you asked the second time. So I took it as, the universe saying, this is your opportunity to do what's actually right for you. And so it's just like getting really grounded, I think, in those tiny moments. Because in the past, like, I would have spun out the whole story of like, well, if I don't say yes, she's going to think I don't want to spend time with her. And then she's going to think that I don't like her. And then she's going to think I'm judging her, and da 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 da. But then I'm ending up in a situation that we've been in for the past decade where when we're together, it's just not good because I don't actually want to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And healthy barriers and boundaries are important.
Yeah.
And it's working out the difference between when you're blocking something because you're doing it out of fear versus that you're creating those barriers and boundaries out of love because it's important. And I love the fact that you listen to your guides and they gave it, they gave you the message twice, and that option. And when that happens, you have to act on it, as you say. Otherwise, you're going to spend the next X amount of time worrying about that trip, being on that trip and not wanting to be there, and then spending a couple of days getting your energy back into the right place where it was before you went on the trip.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important to make those choices of who you want to spend your time with, because a lot of the time we spend time with people that we don't really want to spend time with. And especially the people that, when you're really intuitive, and it's the same with anyone because we all are, when we're really sensitive, sometimes it can take a while. It's always about I always share, it's sometimes not the feeling that you're left with. It's not the feeling when you're with the person, it's the feeling that you're left with afterwards.
Yes.
So if you have that friend who you love being with and it's so much fun, but like for the next 2 days you're exhausted and emotional and you kind of wonder why you need to recharge your batteries, you got to start noticing that stuff. Yeah.
Have you found it? What has been your experience with friends as you've tapped into being so open with the spirit world and all of this type of, and being so, because like you said, everyone's sensitive, but I think there's another level of sensitivity that comes when you're taking in all of this information as a psychic and a medium.
Yeah, definitely. I've had to get very picky of who I want to be around and who I don't. My friendships have massively changed. I felt bad at first because I used to be a people pleaser, and he said I am a people pleaser. No, I am not a people pleaser. I would do things to keep people happy. I'd say yes, I'd turn up, I'd be there, I'd show up, and then be like, why am I here? I don't really want to be here. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore on an energy basis. My friendship group has got really small, and I came from having a lot of friends and being super social to being very picky about the places I would go to and who I wanted to spend my time with and who I didn't. And that pissed off a lot of people. People thought that I didn't value their friendship anymore. And I lost some friends over it. But for me, and that was painful. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this all for spirit. Is this worth it? Straight up. There were moments where, some key friendships drifted off. But now I know that the people that are around me and the people that I want to spend time with are aligned with who I am. They're aligned with intuition and spirit, and we can talk about stuff and it's not weird and strange. And they also respect that when I need to rest and recharge and I want to spend alone time and I say no to things, it's not because I don't want to spend time with them. It's just because I'm not feeling it that day.
Mm-hmm. I love that. No, I'm so happy you said that, because that's kind of like where I feel like I've been at. And it's just very, it's interesting because you do ask yourself, like, is it worth it? And like, you still do love them. And that's been the craziest thing for me, because I'm like, oh, I still do really love them, but I don't love how I feel for the couple of days it takes me to recover my energy from them and to get back into a place of equilibrium. And so that's always been, I think, one of those interesting things. You also talked about, like, when you were going through that period with the ex, with all of the things happening in your home, you were almost 30. And so I don't know if you're into Saturn return or anything like that. I would love to hear a little bit about your experience with your Saturn return, because that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, it was dramatic. I'm not going to lie. It was really dramatic. My parents got divorced. So I was 28. So they'd been together for over 30 years. So that was at the start of my Saturn return. So was the emotions of dealing with that. Then a couple of 18 months later, my 5-year relationship ended. And that was really traumatic because especially as a woman, as we approach 30, it's all about marriage, babies, and having all of that. And I felt so removed from that. I suddenly felt like, oh my God, I have straight up, oh my God, I've got nothing. Like all of my foundations, all of my structures were just crumbling around me. And I was like, what is happening? I also had changes in work. I went from working full-time in film to being freelance because I realized I also needed that as a freedom. So that as a structure all collapsed. At the time during it, I was like, oh, this is insane. Is there anything else that wants to happen? But looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, thank goodness. This was the best time ever. It just created clarity. It made me get really clear on what I wanted and what I didn't. It made me realize what was important, and it acted as an amazing life clear out for me, and just really it created a lot of freedom and created a lot of the old structures that were holding me back from straight up doing this work. I feel like my Saturn return allowed me to step into me a lot more, and for me to discover who I was and what I was about.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like the common thing. I was curious if your career had like made a big pivot also, because that kind of seems like the general, I keep hearing that a lot from people, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So that's super cool. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with?
Wow. Main message from me is connect to your intuition and know that you have this gift, even if it doesn't feel like you are intuitive, and that you have a gift, because you really can. And it is all just about opening your eyes to the world around you and believing that you can, and just start with the baby steps. Ask your guides to step forward. Start asking for signs, and just we're in a time where we want to connect. It's important for us all to connect to intuition and let go of the fear and the shame around this work, because it is truly transformational when we do connect.
Oh, I love that. And where can everyone find you?
You can find me. My website is natalie-miles.com, as in the distance, MILES, and my Instagram is I am Natalie Miles.
Which I love following, because she gives you like tons of daily messages and stuff like that. It's super inspirational. It's one of my favorite accounts to follow.
Thank you, sweetie. Yeah, I do a daily upgrade message. So I channel a message from Spirit every day on the energy of the day. And it's always really good fun, because you realize that we're all so connected energy-wise.
Yeah. Speaking of upgrades, so like all of your different services are called different upgrade things. So you want to go into those a little bit? Because I know we touched on past life. You actually do Well, I'll let you tell people what you do.
Yeah. So I do a variety of things. I do one-on-one soul upgrades, which are basically we kind of connect you to your guides, bring through the messages that they want to share. They basically talk about how to remove blocks, your soul path, what's coming up for you. It's got a little bit of mediumship in there as well. It's just a real blend of all the services that I offer. I then do a mediumship upgrade for anyone that wants to spend the whole hour, talking to a loved one that's crossed over and that's passed over. So I do that as well. And then I also offer a past life upgrade where we specifically delve deep into past lives to create the healing around that too.
I love it. Yeah, Eric and I both did the soul upgrades, which were amazing. And you really do get like a taste of like everything, at least my session. I don't know about Eric's session. I'm sure he got a taste of everything too, but I really got a taste of all three of those. There were spirits that wanted to come through and talk to me. You talked about my past life. You talked about my blocks. Like, it was really powerful. I mean, I was in tears. I was just, it was awesome.
No. Thank you, sweetie. Oh, and I must also say, I also have on my website a free quiz. So if you want to know how you receive your messages, there's a free intuitive guidance quiz on my website, which will tell you whether you receive your messages through hearing, seeing, knowing, or feeling.
Yes, love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a great chat.
I love that. I just want to thank Natalie again so much for sharing her time and her wisdom and her gifts with us. So happy to have connected with her, and I hope that you guys will go ahead and check her out on Instagram at I am Natalie Miles. She's one of my favorite accounts to follow because she gives just so many actionable tools and inspiration that you guys can really continue developing the relationship with your guides. And if you guys are on Instagram, make sure to screenshot this episode, share it on your Insta story, tag her, tag me at The Confused Millennial. That way we can go ahead and meet who's listening to the episode. I love connecting with you guys, and B, just thank you for listening and all of that fun stuff. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, you can hit subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, all that fun stuff. And leave a rating, leave 5 stars if you enjoyed it. It really helps the podcast get discovered. And thank you guys once again for spending another week with us. Talk to you next week.